One of the problems I think we have in politics today is that the people that are viewing it, the people that are consuming it, have a very short memory. So, unless something that a politician does is a big scandal and is making all the headlines for a while, generally within a couple months, people have forgotten what they say. And because of this, it's very easy for them to pull the wool over our eyes. So, whenever a politician is acting in a very opportunistic way and they're trying to manipulate people, people they seem to think that this is part of who they are, even if what they're doing is just as a means to try and gain more votes. And if you were to look at the grander scheme of what they believe in, it's going to be the complete opposite of that. And this is something that I think as a nation we need to get over. We need to start understanding that there's a difference between something that a politician says and something that they believe. There's a saying that you don't let your tactics dictate your strategy. So you got your strategy, which is your overall goal, and then your tactics are the little things that you do in there in order to achieve that goal. And people tend to look at the tactics and they think that is a strategy. And part of this reason, from what I think it is that people want to attribute something that these people do, someone that they view as a leader, they want to attribute that into something that they actually want to see achieved. That they're willing to look past all the obvious signs. They're willing to forget all these other things that they said or all these other things that they've done because they want to believe so hard that this politician is actually working for them. And I think that we're kind of seeing this right now with what's going on in the States with Donald Trump. A lot of people have attributed to him something that he has talked that says he's going to do the complete opposite of. So there's a lot of people that are talking about how Donald Trump is going to do these mass deportations, basically as if he's going to come in, start bringing on these squads of people that are going to go door to door and send home all these immigrants. And to a certain degree, he might end up doing something like that. He might do these deportations, but at the same time, Donald Trump, while he wants to deport the illegals, he's also said that he wants more people than ever to come into the country. So basically, they're going to offset the illegals with legal immigration. But a lot of people wanted to believe that he was this candidate that they were willing to overlook that. They also wanted to believe that Donald Trump was going to be a defender of free speech and of gun rights in the United States. And yet, already, he's starting to put those under attack. Matt Gaetz was the favorite to become the attorney general in the U.S., and then he ended up getting scrapped for another woman who I think her name was Pam Bondi. And she's already floating the idea of red flag laws to Donald Trump. Now, if people can remember, this was something that happened in his first term as well. Is that when he was approached with this idea, he was actually quite in favor for it. It seems like the backlash from his base is what prevented it from really being signed into a law. And then there's also talks about how he wants to strengthen anti-Semitic laws, something that he already did while he was in office. But now he wants to add even more laws and regulations on the book to charge people with to charge people who are guilty of being anti-Semitic. So a lot of people looked at the tactics and thought that this was Donald Trump's strategy. They put their own hopes and dreams into some of the stuff that he was saying without looking at the bigger picture. And this is something that we have here in Canada right now. This is something that I see a lot of the conservative voters doing with Pierre Poilievre. They want so hard to believe that he is something that he's not, that they're putting their own beliefs and what they want to see happen, they're attributing it to him, even though he has never said that he's going to do these things. And he also, if anything, has said the opposite. The big one of this is immigration. People kind of want to believe that he's going to be sort of like a Trump figure where he's going to come in and start deporting all these people. But we have countless examples of him on the record saying the complete opposite of that. And basically how he wants to make it easier for these people to come in, especially when we're talking about Indians, because he's been pandering to them a lot since he became the leader of the opposition. And people need to understand that the Conservative Party never was an anti-immigrant party. They were never even really a party when it came to strengthening immigration laws, making it more difficult for them. Because everyone wants to believe that this whole mass immigration and the things that we're dealing with, they started under Justin Trudeau, but the fact of the matter is it didn't. This was going on in the Harper years as well. It's been scaled up since Trudeau came into office, but Harper was just as guilty of this. Even under Harper, we were seeing at least 250,000 permanent residents that were entering this country every single year. And that's not including the temporary foreign workers. That's not including the student visas that end up getting issued out. And these are all pathways for people to become permanent residents and then citizens of this country. That's not taking into all the asylum seekers that we ended up bringing in under his years. So absolutely, it ended up getting ramped up under Trudeau. But we can't make the mistake of thinking that this just began with Justin Trudeau. The Conservatives have shown themselves time and time again that they are not the defenders of Canada that people want them to believe. They're not even the right-wing party that people believe them to be. People want to act like Pierre Poilievre is some fascist, some far-right fascist. The guy is not even close to that. You can barely say that he's center-right. His biggest thing that he's always kind of gone after has been economic. And that's the thing about a lot of conservatives these days, is that they're economic conservatives, but they're not social conservatives. A lot of conservatives refuse to stand up for what they believe in these days. Even no matter how bad they think that this thing that they're opposing is. A good example of this is abortion in Canada. There are no laws governing abortion in Canada. That ended up coming out of, what was it? Was it Morgentaler, I think his name was? The Morgentaler case, the big one back in, I think it was the 80s, where they removed any restrictions on abortion. So, people freak out about things going on in the States, but the fact of the matter is, here in Canada, from the moment of conception all the way up to 9 months, you can have an abortion. And yet conservatives have said repeatedly that they're not going to open the debate at all. We're not talking about laws. We're just talking about a debate. They're not even willing to do that. This is why I always found it hilarious when you have people like Justin Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh or any of these other lefty politicians that are trying to use it as a wedge issue against the Conservatives, because none of them are even going to touch that with a 20-foot pole. Now, if you believe that abortion is baby killing, then you should be opposing that. You should be opposing that quite hard. You want to debate that. You would want laws put in place because, Jesus Christ, they're murdering children. And yet the Conservatives can't be bothered to do that. And the same is true when it comes to immigration. I kind of fucked with the Conservative Party a little bit back several years ago. I was hoping that they would be a party that I could get behind, a party that I could respect, especially because they're such a well-established party. They've been around since Confederation, that I really wanted to believe that they were the sort of the pro-Canada, pro-Canadian party, but they are anything but. And even though I was starting to get disillusioned with the Conservative Party, I would say that the nail in the coffin for me is when I saw this. So this is going back all the way to 2019. This was May 2nd, 2019. This article says, Tory immigration critic Michelle Rempel aims for middle ground between Liberals and Bernier. They face challenges from the left and the right. The Liberals harden their position on asylum seekers, while the People's Party has capitalized on immigrant sentiments. So this was at the height of when people were crossing over at Roxham Road. So even though they kind of said that the Liberals had hardened their stance or had hardened their stance on asylum seekers, they hadn't. I mean, this was still when the RCMP were acting like bellhops for these people, carrying their luggage across the border. And we even at one point sent the military down there to set up temporary tents and all that, so that way these people could have a place to sleep. So we weren't doing stuff to actually deter these people. There was no hardened position from the Liberals. But anyway, yeah, this was the article, and it was what Michelle Rempel ended up saying in this article. So it says here, a quote from her: "As our leader Andrew Scheer has made clear, there is no home in the Conservative Party of Canada for anti-immigrant or racist sentiments," Rempel said. "Anyone who harbors those beliefs does not have a political home in our movement." So you couldn't even really question. Oh shit, I did not. My bad. I didn't even. My mistake. I didn't even switch over the screen. So, but yeah, this was the article here. Tory immigrant critic Michelle Rempel aims for middle ground between Liberals and the Bernier, and this is the quote here that she ended up saying. So, it was quite clear from years ago that this was not the anti-immigrant party. This is not the one that's going to get tougher on them. It's going to reduce immigration. They always kind of want to keep it at least at Harper levels, pre-Trudeau levels at the very least, which was still mass immigration. And it seems like now that under Pierre Poilievre, they just want to bring more people in. And this is according to quotes that he's put out there. But yeah, so this was, you weren't even allowed with the Conservative Party to really question this policy, this immigration policy that the Trudeaus were releasing, that the Conservatives wanted to work under. You weren't even allowed that, or you had no political home in their movement. So that was about the final straw in the coffin for me. And even to go into my example about how Conservatives aren't really a right-wing party or anything, Michelle Rempel was a superstar in there up until a few years ago. There was a point where a lot of people ended up liking Michelle Rempel, but she was the most lefty person in the Conservative Party. And I would argue that at times she was one of the most liberal people in the House of Commons. I mean, we look at something that she's done here. We look at how she has had bitch fights with other female MPs in Parliament about who's a real feminist. She voted in favor of Bill C-17, the pronoun bill that Jordan Peterson got all famous for. I think there was something else, but oh yeah. And then she also partnered up with a tranny called Morgan Ogre, which was a very fitting name, by the way. It was a very fitting name because this person was ugly as shit. But she partnered up with Morgan Ogre to speak at an event, and Morgan Ogre at the time was trying to create an online registry for extremist voices. So this was a very lefty person that she was teaming up with in order to do this. But yet she was a superstar, basically up until the point she started blocking half of Canada, and then people really started to fall off of her. But this was a superstar for a long time in the Conservative Party, at least a couple years. But there's a lot more that the Conservatives have voted on that what doesn't seem like a very conservative position to stand on. I wouldn't say that they're a very religious party. That's usually typically is one thing that you see with a lot of, especially social conservatives, is there's a religious aspect to it. I haven't really seen any of that with the Conservatives in a long time. Not that it's a big deal to me. But anyway, when we get into Pierre Poilievre's actual stance on immigration, it is a stark difference to what a lot of his supporters say. It's a stark difference from what a lot of his supporters believe his stance is and what they say his stance is. Because this guy has many videos and posts about what his belief is on immigration, and it's not in favor for what we want. For instance, he seems to be more concerned about what's going on with the immigrants in this country, with the foreigners in this country, than he is about the Canadians. Because not so long ago, his timeline was filled talking about the poor immigrants. Talking about the poor immigrants, there was one international student who was living under a bridge. There were some asylum seekers that were out on the streets. Meanwhile, our own people have created tent cities across this country because they've lost their homes. And this is what they've been reduced to But that doesn't seem to be a problem. No, we need to concern ourselves about the foreign student, and we got to concern ourselves about the asylum seekers, which even the term asylum seeker means nothing anymore because people are just abusing that system because it's so easy. They're just abusing that system because it is so goddamn easy for them to become become a refugee and then have all the benefits. Just get all the benefits that our country has to offer. There's something else that I have to pull up. But anyway, let's look at some of the things that he's brought up before. So we already know about the 10 cities. We know that there have been situations where foreign exchange students, where a lot of these international students have faked their documentation in order to get into this country. And he's actually spoken out in favor of them.
Several years ago, a group of shady consultants gave fake admission letters to mostly Punjabi students who came here in good faith to study and be part of the Canadian family. They came here, they followed the law, they studied, many of them completed their programs, and it was the incompetent Liberal government that had accepted the letters in the first place. Now this government is kicking them out of the country, sending them home to poverty and bankruptcy for their families. Why won't this government reverse its incompetence, show a little bit of common sense and compassion, and let those who came here in good faith and are contributing to our economy halt the deportation and allow them to apply for permanent residency?
Now, the thing is that needs to be brought up when we're talking about this situation is we got these fake documents, and a lot of people are kind of attributing it to this idea that it was these people that were trying to come to Canada to study. You know, they happened to come across a con man or something that gave them fake documentation. They came here and found out later, oh shit, you know, these aren't real, and now they're getting kicked out, and oh, poor me, you know, like, I didn't know, I paid for this, I didn't know. But that's not what ended up happening, because the vast majority of these people that fake these documents are from India. Now, what ended up happening is that these people knew these were fraudulent documents, and they purchased these documents to use them to get into the country. These were not people that were victims of a scam. These were the scammers. They took part in the scam. They paid in order to have these documents made for them, so that way they could come in and they could use it to gain access to our society, access to the benefits of our society. And these are not the victims, and yet we have Pierre here that is speaking out in favor of them. In favor of them as if they are some sort of victims. Now, this isn't the only time he said these sort of things, because this guy has also gone out and spoken to the Indian community about how he wants to stop any sort of deportations.
The solution is obvious. End the deportations. Allow everyone who applied honestly but who was defrauded to continue to keep their work or study permit, and allow them to apply just like everyone else to become permanent residents. That's what I'm calling for. Stop the deportations. Stop the deportations. Stop the deportations. Stop the deportations. We need 700 young people. We need 700 young people to work in our factories.
This is a problem that we have with Pierre, is that Pierre has been campaigning with the Indians for basically since he became the leader of the Conservative Party. He's been campaigning for him, and he's making all these promises about how he wants to bring more in, make it easier. I mean, he talks about things about how this immigration system is broken. But it's very clear that even though he says he wants to fix the immigration system that was broken under Justin Trudeau, A lot of people attribute that as if that means he's going to make it more difficult. He's going to stiffen the regulations, and he's going to stop this just mass immigration of low-skilled, low IQ people from the third world, when that's not what he's going to do at all. In fact, not only is his plan to replace us in our own country, it's to replace us in our own jobs. See, we have here where he's talking about. We have here the video here where he's talking about the system being broken.
Yes, it is broken. What we see especially broken is the immigration system, which leaves 1 million immigrants waiting longer than the acceptable wait time to get into Canada.
1 million immigrants. This is a shit ton of people. This is a city, a small city. I mean, the population of Ottawa is just over 1 million, and this is the type of people that he wants to bring in. And again, he makes it seem like he wants to stiffen the regulations. He wants to make it more difficult. We're only bringing in the best, but that's not what he says. Whenever he goes on and he goes and elaborates on this isn't what he ends up saying.
So to get our economy firing on all cylinders, we need to quickly process economic immigration. I also want to incentivize provinces to speed up foreign credentials recognition. Newcomers who arrive qualified as doctors, engineers, but can't work in their field. Yes. I want to sign deals with the provinces so that we have a 60-day guarantee.
So there you go. He wants to bring in people to replace you at the jobs. Now, the thing is that when you look at the job market these days, is that there is such a push for DEI employees right now that it's becoming increasingly more difficult for the native Canadian to get a job. A lot of people are starting to report about how difficult it is to find a job, and these aren't just new people that are kind of like, young adults that are coming in, starting their first jobs. It's not just that, but these are skilled people who've worked in their industry for a long time that are looking to, maybe they lost their job, maybe they're looking to find a new job with a new company, and they are having a tough time finding jobs right now. And this is part of the reason why. Now, let's not forget that the government has said that it is going to subsidize the wages of many of these employees. So that's up to $10,000 per year. Now, if you look at that and you really break that down, if you're talking about a minimum wage job, that's a third of the salary. Even if we want to go on the higher end, even if you want to be a job that makes $100,000 per year, that is still 10% of the salary. Now, what kind of chance do you have when the two options for an employer is they can hire the Canadian and pay their salary completely, or they can hire the foreigner and have a certain percentage of their wages subsidized? You look at a lot of these fast food restaurants these days, like you look at a Tim Hortons. It used to be that this was a good place for people to have their first jobs. Hell, it was my first job I ever worked at was at a Tim Hortons. But that's not the case anymore. It's a bunch of fucking foreigners now. It's Browntown inside of Tim Hortons these days. People are to make jokes about how it's called Sing Hortons now and how it's Indian food now. And it might be a joke, but god damn it, is it ever fucking true? And part of the problem is, and that this happens a lot with Indians. I know it happens a lot with Indians, but it also happens with a lot of other groups, which is when they come into a field and they come into a position of power, they hire other people like themselves. They hire more all Indians and that. And this is why you have certain industries that have been completely taken over. The trucking industry is one that has a significant Indian population right now. I think, I can't remember the exact number, but I want to say it was 70% of the truckers in Canada now are Indian. And on top of that, we're seeing a ton of problems with that now, too. We're seeing a ton of problems with them taking over the industry. Which was laid out in this magazine, Desi Trucking Magazine, from the March-April edition of 2024. They go into some of the problems that we're having right now. So yeah, page 17. Where's the zoom? There it is. But it says right up here, not more than a decade ago, the incident of collisions involving big trucks was around 6,000 in all of Canada, with clearly the overwhelming majority not attributable to the truck driver. Today, there is some 26,000 wrecks in Ontario alone, but only along the Ontario Provincial Police Patrol Highway, with the overwhelming majority fully attributed to the truck driver. Now, there is a scam that's I would call it a scam. Probably other people would argue that and say it's not technically a scam, but there is a problem right now where there is this pipeline from India to trucking, which is that employers will hire people from India, bring them over to become truck drivers, and that way they can use it as sort of a stepping stone to get into the country on a permanent basis. But because of this, they're also coming in and they're just terrible drivers. Brampton, one of the heaviest population of Indians in this country, also has the highest insurance rates because there's so many goddamn car accidents down that way. And now we're seeing it all the time over here. The videos that I've seen recently are just unbelievable. A few months ago, there was one of a truck driver, I think it was down in Toronto, that was driving the wrong way on the highway. He was going into oncoming traffic. There was another one of a truck driver that was driving in between the two highways going each way. There was a grassy patch. He was driving on that grassy patch for some reason, and they come to an underpass, and if he was on the road, he would have gone over the bridge, but he was on the grass. So what happens? He goes flying off and nearly hits someone underneath him. He nearly squashed somebody down there. There was another angle from that person's personal dash cam where the truck just comes flying down off the overpass. And there's all the time, there's more and more stories of their driving and what is happening, the accidents that they're causing. Don't forget, what was it? Was it 7 years ago, there was the Humboldt Broncos crash that killed how many underage kids? So this is an ongoing problem that we have in this country. But now Pierre wants to bring in more to take over these positions. This is what he keeps talking about over and over again. He's talking about how he wants to bring them in to do the jobs. So it started out that we were being replaced in our own country by these people from coming half the world away. And now they want to replace us at the jobs. And this is happening all over. I mean, there was something just the other day about how there's a number of foreigners who I think they were specifically talking about Indians. There are more Indian landowners in the UK now than there are of native-born UK. Maybe it was London that they were specifically talking about. But the fact of the matter is that there are sections of the UK where foreigners own more land than the native population. That shouldn't be happening, but it is. And this is increasingly becoming the situation here in Canada as well. And one of the reasons for this is because they're basically giving first choice on all the jobs, leaving the scraps left for you. The scraps left for you, whose family has helped build up this country, whose taxes go in to pay for the subsidization of their wages, and that's not even talking about all the grants and other programs that are in place to make their lives easier. And you're being left out in the cold. And people want to believe that Pierre is going to change that, but he's not. You listen to his words, and he's not saying that whatsoever. But because he's made a few opportunistic comments about he might lean that way, people have attributed that as if he's going to do the deportations. The fact of the matter is, and it doesn't give me any pleasure to say this, but Justin Trudeau has done more. The Liberals have done more to stop mass immigration lately than the Conservatives have. Now, how the hell did we reach that point? The Conservatives should have seen the way that the wind was going and how many people were angry about this, and they should have capitalized on that. But the fact of the matter is, they're a weak party filled with cowards, and they were worried what would happen if they took this stance, and how they were going to get hammered in the news, how they were going to get hammered by the Liberals and the NDP, and whoever else, the people on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else or Reddit. They were more worried about that than what was actually beneficial to this country. Fact of the matter is, most conservatives are not principled whatsoever. And this goes back to what I was saying about abortion. That despite the fact they think it's baby murder, they're not even willing to take a principled stance on it. And now, basically, he's trying to sort of, now that Justin Trudeau and them have come out and talking about how they're not going to renew the visas of, I think it was almost 5 million people. I'm trying to remember the exact number. I think it was almost 5 million people that are going to expire by the end of next year. And he's trying to kind of play it out like, oh, no, I'm going to do that too. I'm going to do that too. But he's not going to do that. He's just trying to catch up. He's trying to catch up to them and sort of capitalize on a wave that they have capitalized on that they shouldn't have. There's no way that the Liberals should have done this. But everything that he says is different. He's talking about how the system is broken. He wants to fix it. Now he's talking about how he wants to make it easier for them to come over and get more jobs. Jobs that are meant for you and me. And then there was always this gem that came out.
Mr. Pierre, happy Baisakhi.
Happy Baisakhi. Sat Sri Akal. Good to be with you.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Many people thinking Conservative Party of Canada anti-immigration.
No, wrong.
Yeah, people say that.
No. Babji, that's wrong.
Okay.
Conservative Party is fighting for every Canadian, including our newcomers. My wife is a refugee from Venezuela.
Yep.
We stand for immigrants. In fact, we want to fix the immigration system that Justin Trudeau has broke. We're going to use common sense. We'll support lawful immigration. We'll make it faster to unite families, bring people to fill job openings, and rescue people from danger. And we'll make it lawful and get rid of all the chaos the Liberals have caused.
So when he's Prime Minister, he's going to bring families together. Conservative Party is not anti-immigration party. Support him.
Pro-Canadian, pro-immigration. Let's bring it home for Canada. Let's bring it home for everybody. The common sense of the common people united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Bole so nihal.
Sat Sri Akal. Thank you. Okay.
So this is our supposedly pro-Canada leader. Supposedly pro-Canada leader that can't help but associate himself with every foreigner that comes into this country, no matter what. And look what they even say. He's going to bring families together. Well, it's not your family and it's not my family he's bringing together. It's their families. More and more of them. They want to keep just filing them into this country. So that way they can multiply and turn more of this country into little India. They're not integrating anymore. Many of these people coming in are not integrating anymore. That's not just a problem in Canada, that's a problem all over the fucking world. Many are just forming up on their own little communities. They're not even bothering to learn the language anymore. You know, there's some down in Los Angeles, because they have such a high Mexican population, there are some jobs that are requiring people, and I mean low-wage jobs. We're talking like McDonald's workers and stuff, where you have to be able to speak Spanish. And I'm sure that if we were to look at places in, say, Brampton as an example, there are places where you probably have to be able to speak Punjabi or whatever the fuck else they speak, whatever their language is, because there's so many of them, and they're not even bothering to learn English. They're not even really bothering to learn French, at least not in to a proficient level. Maybe they learn a little bit just to get by, but that's about the best that we're getting. So we need more over here, so that way we can have more ethnic conflicts between the Sikhs and the Hindus. I can't tell you how many videos and pictures I've seen of Pierre Poilievre wearing this do-rag and chanting or singing at some event with the Indians. Now, this is something we used to criticize Justin Trudeau for. This is the pro-Canada leader, I am told over and over again. Pro-Canada. You know what? You can sit there and you can say he's pro-Canada all you want, but he is not pro-Canadian. He has never been pro-Canadian. Because we got two types of Canadas that we have here now, and people need to understand this. There is the Canada that you and I think we live in, which is what a lot of these conservatives think they live in. And then we've got the actual Canada, which is the new Canada. The Canada that is not for the Canadians. The Canada that is the cesspool of the world, where just anyone can come in and they will be supported by the government, by all these politicians, by all these NGOs, and all of these charities, and all of these programs, and all of these grants. It'll be supported on your tax dollar. We are living in two different worlds right now. And that's something that the Canadian man needs to understand. This idea of the world that many people grew up in, this idea of Canada that many people grew up in, is gone. Okay? It's gone. What we used to have was a clean society. We used to have a polite society. We used to have a safe society. Sure, it wasn't perfect. It was never perfect. It was never perfectly clean. It was never perfectly prosperous. And it was never perfectly safe. But it was a lot better than what the rest of the world had to offer. And now that's gone. It's gone because we imported the third world in huge numbers. And we told them that regardless of who they are or where they came from, that they can continue being the people that they were in that country. And you know what happens when that's what you advocate for? You lose what makes your society special. Because it wasn't the country that made Canada the way it was. It was the people. It was the values that they upheld. It was the people who believed that there was a certain way to live your life. Whether that was helping your neighbors, or whether that was helping your neighbors, whether that was working hard, whether that was making sure that people got home safe, whatever the hell it was. Those were Canadian values that were formed and created by the people that lived here. And those values are being destroyed because we are bringing people in who don't share our beliefs. And that is the problem. And they want to erase your contributions. They want to erase your contributions, and they want to replace it with the contributions of others, even if those contributions weren't anything significant. Because the contributions of the white European in this country is what made Canada what it is. And maybe there are others from other ethnic groups or other religions that contributed in some degree. But let's be very clear, this is secondary or tertiary to the things that we did. And yet, you can't have a statue of John A. MacDonald. You know, here in Ottawa, a couple years ago, they renamed the MacDonald Parkway to the Kitchi Zimby Mikatan Parkway. So they're erasing the contributions of your ancestors. And in fact, they downplay it. They like to say things like how everyone is an immigrant here. Oh, we're all immigrants to this country. Let's get something very clear. My ancestors were not immigrants. My ancestors were pioneers. They came to this country when nothing was here. They had to build up. There was no safety net when these people came over here. They didn't know if they were sailing into just death, just pure death. But they showed up. They started building. They started building it into what it is today, little by little. They contributed a little bit, and then their descendants contributed a little bit. They had to deal with all of the worst that this country had to offer. Predators in the woods. The bitter cold, well, all they had was maybe a log cabin with a fireplace in it to keep themselves warm. Sometimes they didn't even have that. Sometimes all they had was a tent or some makeshift shelter. This is what our ancestors ended up doing. And they want you to believe that that is the same thing as the person who steps off the plane here and then immediately receives funding from the government. Lots of funding, by the way. This was something that made the rounds on Twitter a little while ago. Here is what you would have to gross in each province in order to make the same amount refugees in Canada take. Canada is such a fake and gay country. So, in order to match what a lot of these refugees in Canada are receiving, in Alberta you'd have to make $105,000. BC 110, Manitoba 115, New Brunswick 112, Newfoundland 120, the Northwest Territories 108, Nova Scotia 118, Nunavut 106, Ontario 113, PEI 114, Quebec 117, Saskatchewan 111, and Yukon $109,000. And that's because many of these people are having their entire life being funded by our taxpayer dollars. So here we can see when it comes to those that are staying in the hotels, that the government is paying $140 per night per room based on January 2024 rates, and the average cost of a meal per claimant is $84 per day per claimant as of based on January 2024 rates. So they're having the most important parts of their life being funded by you. Because if you your mortgage is probably the biggest bill that you will pay in any given month. And if you don't have a mortgage, your rent is still probably the biggest bill that you'll pay. Imagine that was being subsidized. And we know what the price of groceries is right now, so imagine your food was subsidized. How well would you be doing in life if those two things were being subsidized? And this is just speaking about what they're paying to keep them alive. It's not taking into account any money that they might receive in order just be able to buy stuff, be able to become a consumer. But this is what they're doing for them, and they'll spit on you if you even so much as ask for a breadcrumb. So this is what I mean when we got two different Canadas. The one that many native-born Canadians believe they live in, and the one that it actually is, where you subsidize your replacement. Meanwhile, you have to fight and scrape to survive, because this place has become so ridiculously expensive to live in anymore that it doesn't even feel like a first world country. How much money do you pay in taxes? And it turns out that you look at the services that you're getting. I even just look at when it comes to garbage. You know, when I was a kid, you could just put your garbage at the end of your driveway and they would come by once a week to pick it up. Then that became once every 2 weeks. Then it became, well, for certain areas, then it became, well, you can't put it at the end of your driveway, or like if you're in certain neighborhoods, you can't just put it at the end of your doorway anymore at the curb. No, now you have to bring it to a designated area. Now you can't have, more than 3 bags, I think it is? That's coming here in Ottawa that I'm talking about. Yet you're paying more in taxes and your services keep going down. Keep going down, 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 down. But I'm told that this is the pro-Canada leader. All these other ones are globalists, and this is a patriotic Canadian who's going to do the best for Canadians. Well, I look out into his crowd, and I don't see very many fucking Canadians out there. And part of the reason I don't believe in Pierre is because I've seen the way he's acted before. You know, I'm supposed to believe that the Conservative Party is someone that I should support. Well, let me ask you something. Where was the Conservative Party's support when I needed it? When you needed it? Where was the Conservatives during the height of COVID? A lot of his opponents want to try and paint him as if Pierre Poilievre is some sort of radical, one that stood with the trucker convoy. The guy showed up to take a few photos with people and then fucked off. And he did that once he saw where the winds were going. When he saw that many people were supporting the truckers in what they were trying to do, then he was willing to come out and take some photos with them just for the clout. Meanwhile, what he was actually doing during those times was this.
The rest of the world is reopening while we're being confined to our basements because of the wave of the variants that this prime minister allowed. Why did the rest of the world have access to vaccines in January and February while we did not? What they needed is vaccines. What they needed is vaccines. What they needed is vaccines. Yeah. That was the one job he had at this point in the crisis. Now he tries to throw in a cape and says he's the hero that's going to solve the problem that he caused. Yeah. The reality is the rest of the world was...
That is quite ironic for him to say, especially now, talking about how he wants to throw on a cape. What was his exact quote?
That's going to solve the problem. Tries to throw in a cape. Yeah. That was the one job he had at this point in the crisis. Now he tries to throw in a cape and says he's the hero.
Isn't this exactly what Pierre is trying to do with just about everything? He's trying to pretend that he is the hero, coming in to save the country, put the country back right. And yet, from everything I've seen, we're just going down the exact same path. The problem with politics these days, too, is that, and I've used this description many times, and I will do it again, because I think it's a great description, is that we are in a car heading towards the cliff. And all these parties want to do is argue about what speed the car should be going. The Conservatives want it to go a little bit slower. The Liberals want to press on the gas. But not one of these politicians, not one of these parties are advocating for us to turn the wheel. Yeah, you're going to go off-road. You're going to get bumped and bruised and battered up, but you are going to live. But all I see from the Liberals and the Conservatives is that they just want to say, keep heading towards the cliff, just go this speed instead. You know, I want you to go 60 kilometers an hour. No, I want you to go 100 kilometers an hour. That's basically all we're doing over and over and over again. And people want to keep trying to convince me and keep trying to convince everyone around me that this guy is the hero that Canada needs. It's the same shit that we dealt with Trudeau in that regards. That it's just that this is the guy that Canada needs. He's going to set everything right over and over and over again. I keep hearing the same fucking thing. And at this point, a lot of these party people who are party politics, a lot of these people who talk about how we need to go out there and vote, they sound like they're people in abusive relationships. They want to sit there and have me convinced that things have changed. Even though I've seen from every single one of these politicians, every single one of these people, that nothing has changed and they're doing the same thing over and over again. But it's just, and you tell people that and they don't believe you. It's like somebody that keeps going back to an abusive spouse. Why are you going back? They're just going to do it again. No, they said it'll be different this time. Well, that's what they said last time, and they lied to you. It was more of the same. No, you have to believe me. He's changed this time. He's changed. This is what these people sound like to me. But at the height of the greatest psyop that our country was going through, the greatest infringement on our civil liberties, Pierre Poilievre was concerned that we didn't have enough vaccines. even though it was unnecessary, even though that our civil liberties were being trampled, even though there were people that were reporting on the problems with these vaccines, about how it wasn't a real vaccine, about how it was dangerous for people to be taking them, he was more concerned that we weren't having more of them.
That's going to solve the problem that he caused. The reality is the rest of the world was being vaccinated in January and February. Vaccination rates in the US and UK are twice what they are here in Canada. The rest of the world is reopening while we're being confined to our basements because of the wave of the variants that this Prime Minister allowed. Why did the rest of the world have access to vaccines in January and February while we did not? That the UK is facing a very serious third wave of COVID-19. Despite, he should be apologizing for his colossal failure to deliver vaccines. He should be apologizing for his colossal failure to deliver vaccines. He should be apologizing for his colossal failure to deliver vaccines. Why weren't Canadians vaccinated in January and February like everyone else? Why weren't Canadians vaccinated in January and February like everyone else? Why weren't Canadians vaccinated?
All right, we get the point. Why that was his big concern during COVID. But I'm told he's different. Now, what about the UN Sustainable Development Goals? Because that's something that a lot of people like to bring up. That's something that a lot of people look at as being a problem that the UN has pushed, and a lot of governments across the world are implementing this, and yet it's becoming a detriment to us. You know, the idea of net zero emissions is part of the Sustainable Development Goals. The tar sand campaign that I've talked about before, which is to landlock Canadian oil and not get it out into the international market, even though our tar sands are some of the most profitable real estate we have in this country. That's part of it. This whole push to get people to stop eating red meat, stop eating cows, and start eating bugs for their protein. That's part of it. So clearly Pierre would be against this, right?
Yes. Yes.
You denounced the UN Sustainable Development Agenda, the SDGs.
I haven't read it, so I don't know what it is.
You haven't read it?
No, I haven't.
That's interesting.
So this is Mark Friesen here, who's been on the political scene for quite a long time. Now, he's done a lot of work when it comes to Sustainable Development Goals. I personally, this man right here is a true Canadian patriot. He always has been. Now, he's talking to Pierre about the Sustainable Development Goals, and he says he hasn't read it. Well, the Sustainable Development Goals, or Agenda 2030, all this has been around for a long time now. So the fact that Pierre doesn't know about it is quite hard to believe. It's quite hard to believe that a man who's been in politics for 20 years now, or 25 years, I'm not really sure how long it's been, wouldn't know about this. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that, you know, he, in his time in Parliament, he never read it or something, but okay. But now Mark's telling him about it, telling him, you got to read this, it's very important, and he's saying, oh, I'm going to read it. But yeah, let's just finish this up.
Want to do a shot?
Sure.
All right.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. I'll have to look at it.
Yes, you will.
I don't
It's very important.
I have a simple rule. If I haven't read it, I don't comment on it.
You need to read it. It's extremely
Thank
important.
you for the good recommendation.
Absolutely.
I'll have a look at it.
So 9 months later, and this is Rob Primo. Rob Primo is then confronting him 9 months later, asking about the Sustainable Development Goals that he said he would look into and that he's going to read. So here we are over a year later after Mark Friesen talked to him about this, because this is the second time that Rob Primo confronted him about it, 4 months after the first time that he confronted him about it.
The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah.
And so
You have a copy?
No.
You have a copy?
Come on, you still don't know.
You should bring a copy.
No.
No, I didn't have a copy, Pierre. And you know why? Because you told us 1 year ago you were going to have a look at it, and you still haven't. But you know what I do have a copy of? I've got a copy of the official report from the House of Commons where you acknowledged the Federal Sustainable Development Act 11 years ago.
Uh-oh.
Let me clarify this for you. Yes, please clarify this 100%.
I want you on my team, man. I really do.
Absolutely. Well,
It's at this point I let Pierre Poilievre know that I'm well aware he's voted in favor of the Sustainable Development Goals before in the House of Commons, and he knows that, and that's why he's trying to distract me and bring us to a different topic now. Bill C-474, Federal Sustainable Development Act. All in favor? Mr. Pierre Poilievre, Conservative.
there's only two teams. It's either going to be Trudeau or me as Prime Minister.
Right.
It's either, because then you've got Trudeau and Bernier who are part of the World Economic Forum, or you've got me who works for Canada.
That's what I want to hear.
I don't want to work for the WEF like Bernier.
Right.
We don't need someone like Bernier who wants a free trade deal with China, who is in favor of legalizing hard drugs. We don't need the guy who's just working day and night to keep Trudeau in power, which is what you've got with Maxime Bernier.
But you
I am in favor of
So this is something I'm actually really glad that I found this, because I wanted to, when I saw this video, I wanted to bring this up. So he's talking about how Max Bernier is part of the World Economic Forum. Quite possibly, I can't say I know for certain that is, but I have something interesting. So I have here a list of a list of a number of Canadian politicians that were part of the World Economic Forum. You probably know some names: Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, Chrystia Freeland, John Tory, Mark Carney, who is the head of the Bank of Canada. And we'll go around. We'll look. Oh, we got some Andrew Scheer on there. We got Michelle Rempel, Melanie Joly, David McKay. We got John Manley, Scott Breeson, and then we get to the back, and look who we have here. We got Jim Watson, we got Doug Ford, and we've got Pierre Poilievre, senior opposition critic for finance and the National Capital Commission, Conservative. Now, it's quite possible that Bernier was part of the World Economic Forum. I mean, I really wouldn't put it past him at this point with a lot of, with how many politicians that we have that were part of the World Economic Forum. But it's very interesting to me that he's laying that criticism when he's on the list. But that was something I've had for a while now. I'm glad I found that.
You have voted on it. You voted on it.
If I could.
Yes, I want you to.
So I have voted always to stand up for Canada. We're going to put Canada first. We're not going to allow any foreign or multinational organization to determine what we do in Canada. Not the UN, not Maxime Bernier's World Economic Forum.
Not the UN.
Not any other organization will decide what we do in Canada. When I'm Prime Minister, we're bringing home power over our own decisions. That's what I want to hear. In the country, and we have to keep the WF types like Maxime Bernier and Justin Trudeau away from it.
Thank you. Good. Will you dispose of the Paris Climate Accord? That's the last question. When you're Prime Minister, will you denounce the Paris Climate Accord or no?
We're going to hit the emissions reduction targets.
Is it fair to say no, you won't then?
We're going to reduce the emissions.
Hit the Paris Climate Accord or no?
We're going to hit the emissions reduction targets.
Is it fair to say no, you won't then?
We're going to reduce the emissions, and we're going to deliver lower costs at the same time. That's my agenda. That's my policy, and no more. Maxime Bernier needs to explain why he was at.
So he's going to hit the emissions. Now, explain to me one thing. How exactly are you going to do that? Hit the emissions while providing lower costs? But again, I mean, for the man who's supposed to be completely different, he seems to be a lot of the same. So this is the problem that we have in our politics right now. The problem is that people seem to have a short memory. And at the same time, they look at small little opportunistic comments that a lot of these politicians make, and they try to attribute that to what their strategy really is. But when you go and look at someone like Pierre Poilievre, it seems quite clear what his stance is on immigration. It seems quite clear what his stance is on zero emissions. His silence in the past has been deafening on very important subjects. And yet I'm told that this is the patriotic Canadian politician who's going to put Canada first. Make Canada great again. And yet I'm not seeing any of it. I'm seeing a watered-down Justin Trudeau. I'm seeing another weak leader of the Conservative Party, which there have been many in the past. Andrew Scheer was a weak leader who refused to capitalize on what should have been gut shots with the Liberal government, to the point where he lost probably the easiest election I've ever seen. That should have been a shoo-in for him. But he didn't capitalize. And then you have Erin O'Toole, who was out there walking in high heels. And now you got Pierre Poilievre, another weak leader. But I'm told that I have to vote for him. See, the problem is that you people, this is the way I view it. On my plate at the moment, I've got a big stinking pile of cow shit. And that's what I'm being told to eat. And then you guys are coming in and telling me, well, don't eat that cow shit. I got this piece of horse shit over here, and you should eat that instead. As if it's better. Well, I'm sitting here saying, I don't want to eat the cow shit. I don't want to eat the horse shit. In fact, I'm getting up from the dinner table. You can eat the horse shit if you want, but it's going to be just as disgusting. And it's going to lead to the same result. You want me to vote, and yet you're not giving me anyone to vote for. And there are other ways to pursue solutions in this country to our problems than simply going to the ballot box every 4 years. There are people that are forming together to try and advocate for what's important in this country, to advocate for the solutions to the real problems that we're facing. And at this point, I'm more willing to go along with that than I am to go along with just going to the ballot box again to vote for the same shitty result again, because time and time again, I have been told that things are different. I was told it was going to be different here in Ontario with Doug Ford, and I believed it. I really did, and that's why I shield hard for him when he was running for the premier, and I have been disappointed time and time again with him. So other solutions are needed. Other solutions are needed. And there isn't a political fix to what we're doing. You can't just go and vote for a politician. How many times have you been let down? There are other means to achieve our goals, and all you have to do in order to achieve those goals is leave the abusive relationship.